My name is Matt Kelly and I love a great experience. In 2011, I broke the world record for the longest high five, which somehow led me to crowd surfing in Austin, Texas. I've written a best-selling book, worked for a billionaire, and hosted an iTunes #1 podcast. And now, I'm a director at JMD, a Brisbane-based creative and marketing agency. I believe that if you're going to do anything in life, do it because it'll be a great story and a great experience, which is exactly what this show is all about. Welcome to the Great XP Podcast. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Great XP Podcast, where we talk to business leaders and marketers about what it means to create a great experience, because we believe that good or bad, something can be learned from every experience that we have. Today's guest is a big one. We've got Kelly Spencer here. Kelly is a supply executive in the Flight Centre business, and she's responsible for the strategic plans of the global corporate travel businesses across the entire group. Kelly, thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
No worries, Matt. Thanks for having me.
So I did some digging. We'll get to the current role and the Flight Centre group and all that stuff, but I saw that you started your career as a financial advisor.
I did.
Which is it feels like a weird trajectory to go from that to where you are now. Give me the background. Why financial advice?
Yes. So I, much to contrary belief, I'm not an accountant, which I get a lot of, not that there's anything wrong with being an accountant, but I studied finance at university, financial economics. So very much in the investment side of the finance world.
Gotcha.
And I kind of had a couple of different paths. I could go down the fund management path and work with a big investment bank, but I've always really loved interacting with people, and whether that be teams, customers, etc. So I guess financial planning was a really good mix of actually having a really strong finance ability and capability, but also being really client-facing and customer-facing. So I launched into that when I was, I think I was 17 or 18, working with a financial planning company, making teas and coffees at the very start
we all do.
Yeah, exactly, as a university student, a part-time role. And then I became full-time just as I was graduating from uni, and was offered to actually become a partner there when I was 22 years old, which was scary.
Yes.
And I think I got a bit of commitment phobia and I decided to jump ship into another role, because I was a bit scared my first role would become my only role in my career.
And like, I would imagine becoming a partner in a financial planning business like that, it probably does become almost a life sentence.
Yeah, well, equity partner, you're buying into a business at 22, you're
not leaving.
Pretty long-term commitment, so which was amazing. But again, at 22, I sort of thought I feel like I've got more to see and do with my career, and
so I've got to ask,
from there.
Based on that then, so you're in that role, I would imagine, are you working with, in that financial planning capacity, are you working with mums and dads?
Yeah.
A small business? What's the type of customer you're dealing with there?
Yeah, I had mums and dads. I had young family, or young husband, wives and their families. I had businesses. We did a lot of business planning and succession planning and the rest of it. And then I also had retirees, which was, I remember at the time, I like to probably one of the things I love to lean into is authenticity. And I kind of felt, I'm sitting there as a 22-year-old opposite people who are transitioning into retirement going, are they going to authentically take my advice here and actually think that I know what they're going through in that stage of their life? So yeah, it was a vast range of customers and clients. I loved it, but yeah, there was probably just something in that I was like, I'm probably just not at that stage of my life to be in that kind of client environment.
Do you think that was a pulse on imposter syndrome, or was it more I just don't feel like I've got the life experience to genuinely do this and do it justice?
I think probably all of the above. I think again, just being able to connect and actually feel what they were going through. It was just something like going into retirement as I'm just about to start my career it was just a bit of a mismatch around experiences, etc. But yeah, probably a bit of imposter syndrome as well. And, I guess credit to myself, years down the track, they certainly took my advice. So clearly it wasn't a matter of...
It wasn't bad.
No, and it was clearly I came across as very credible and knowledgeable and gave sound advice. So I give myself a big pat on the back, 20-something years on. But yeah, I think at the time it always just more came down to, could I be passionate about this type of a scenario, and when it was probably just very unfamiliar to my own.
Yeah, fair. So at the end of that journey in that firm, I know that you then jumped across to Flight Centre in a financial capacity.
Yeah.
I would imagine very different type of customer segment there.
Yeah.
What was that journey?
And I think that's why I came to Flight Centre originally, is because I actually had one of my friends that had done a similar role that I'd worked with previously, and it was a bit of the polar opposite. You walked into Flight Centre and, it was a lot of young people who were starting off in their careers and looking to build wealth and looking to kind of get their finances on track. And I sort of felt like, I feel like I can make a difference to this group of people, and I feel like I could obviously connect and also understand what their mentality is at this stage of their life. Yeah. Exactly. And it was a lot of fun. So, you know what I mean? It was a good mix of, work hard, play hard.
Yes.
And 17 and a half years on, I'm still
working hard and playing hard.
Exactly.
That's good.
Exactly.
Living the brand mantra, which is, it's important.
Yeah.
Let's go through the journey. So you started in that finance role.
Yeah.
You transitioned. So that was, I would imagine, across primarily the travel business.
Yes.
You then transitioned into different business units.
Yep.
So I know that there was education, there was travel money, and then ultimately back to travel. What was the pathway from, you're in that finance role, you're in travel, you move to education, and I noticed, and this is from, jump in if I'm incorrect here, but notice that it looks like the leadership roles kicked in quite early.
Yeah.
What was that journey?
So after financial planning, which is a fairly, sole role in the fact that you're working directly with customers and clients. You're not really leading teams, so to speak. It's very much one-on-one, very B2C. So I took an opportunity in the leadership role and another part of our kind of finance and investment piece in Flight Centre, and I got the chance to run a team and run a national business and get to know more people across the organisation, which I always loved, and working with different people. And then I had the opportunity to go into the education piece. So kind of making that leap from being kind of in very much a finance and, financial planning type of a division to going into something that's completely different in education. And we had B2C businesses, we had B2B businesses. Right. And again, I got the chance to lead a bigger team. And that was, around 2012. And within 3 years, I got the opportunity to become the general manager of that education business. So that was kind of my first foray into senior leadership, general management, overseeing commercial, marketing, product, customer experience, the whole kit and caboodle. So that was a pretty important leap for me and an exciting one.
It probably makes sense jumping in a business the size of the Flight Centre Group, where there are a multitude of companies within it.
Yeah, that
growth rate feels from the outside like it would be really hard to do for the Flight Centre travel business. I would imagine jumping across to the business, it creates all kinds of opportunities to like jump the ladder faster. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, definitely. And I was kind of in our peripheral businesses as far as, we had these juggernauts that is Flight Centre brand, is our corporate brands, etc. I was always in the peripheral businesses, which means that and I always sort of talk about our peripheral businesses. So I spent a bit of time in different leadership roles in them to go, they were really fun, interesting, experience, not only to hone your business and leadership skills, because although they were impactful enough to the bottom line for the company, so therefore you would get, investment, you would get attention from senior leadership around what your plans were and what you wanted to do. It wasn't a core part of the business, so it was a little bit more that as long as you were making sure the results were coming in, they didn't really...
No one's watching over your shoulder, stressed out about what you're doing. Yeah.
And you get the chance to just then not have much bureaucracy, like you can make decisions in a really agile way, you can get results really easily, and well, I shouldn't say easily, certainly not easily, but you can move the dial quicker than having to kind of go to multiple boards or multiple senior teams to try to explain what you want to achieve and how you're going to do it, etc. But the accountability is still 100% on you. So, and thankfully, we were getting great results and getting great growth, and, we were given a bit of a permission to keep on doing that.
Yeah, it's almost like good advice for someone who's at the early stages of their career, where it's like you can go and work for the big brand, but actually the the mid-tier might be a good play to get the runs on the board and experience different things, like work in areas where you wouldn't get the opportunity. You're not going to be invited to the boardroom of an ASX 100 company. You're just not. But as a sort of grad, but you might get that opportunity in a smaller business or a smaller business unit. It makes a lot of sense.
And you also just have complete transparency around the end-to-end business because, generally when you're working in a big brand, and again, I moved on to the big brands recently and later in my career, but you sometimes only see certain aspects of those brands as opposed to when you're in a smaller brand, you see it where to go, whatever you're doing from a marketing spend perspective, how that gets to hit the bottom line in relation to getting that lead converted and making sure you're delivering the experience for your customer, and then obviously working through all your expense lines to ensure that it actually turns a profit and a great experience for the customer. So you really get that full end to end, and again, the stakes are probably just a little bit like lower in relation to the exposure of a big brand in a publicly listed company.
Oh, there's something.
So I loved it. So it was really, it was a really great place to experiment, fail fast, and do a lot of things with great support and backing. But it was really up to your team and yourself and your intuition and the data and all the things that you need to make sure you're honing your skills in.
Yeah, it's like the stakes are high for you, the stakes are high for your team, but it's almost like because you're not betting the house or the farm, right? It's like for the global company,
totally
creates good opportunity. Makes sense. What about travel money? I know that after education, you transitioned into a travel money role, which again, very different business, very different type of service, very different, I imagine, customer base.
Yep.
What was that?
Yeah, so I again got tapped on the shoulder to look at a business that was just at the time really not doing what it needed to do and probably was just going through a really challenging time. So, and I guess probably in my mind I sort of thought, okay, well, I'm in a peripheral business, being the education group, and travel money. At the time, we had over 150 retail locations in foreign exchange, be it cash and foreign exchange cards. So, and what Flight Centre has born out of is a retail business. So I sort of thought, well, this gives me a chance to actually get closer to the retail business without
so
being
it's a strategic move.
Yeah, definitely. And I just sort of thought, again, I'd come from a B2C business in the education group, and this was a B2C brand. So I kind of, again, felt that I had some really good foundational experience and expertise around, again, marketing, product, commercial, etc. But all of a sudden I had this retail footprint with a big capex of, store fit out and a big rent roll, and, it's a whole other dimension of assets that you need to produce a return on, and again, so much closer to what Flight Centre, not so much now, is all about, because we obviously have a diversification of brands, but Flight Centre, by its very nature, originally was a retail travel business. So, as I said, the business was really not going well, and I came into that business and backed myself, backed my team, had to obviously move a few people in and out of the business to kind of get the right team together. And, over a 2-year period, we turned that business around by about $30 million. So profitability, which was huge. And again, it was on the peripheral, but at the time it was producing over, 1.5 billion in sales. So
Crazy.
It was significant. So again, I definitely felt a bit more of the sort of spotlight in that business, because we had physical assets that we obviously had in stores and long-term rent commitments and all the rest of it. But again, it was significant enough, but it was still a business that wasn't the core travel business. So, that was probably one of my favorite times as well, just because we achieved a lot as a team, and that business is fired back post-COVID in a really strong way as well. So it's been a good legacy.
Yeah. I think about, staff, people moving in and out of jobs all the time. Rent roll's a different game. Like that money's gone out of the account no matter what. So there's that hard cost attached to that business. It would have been, I imagine, very different to running an education company. Very different.
Totally. And, you're dealing with millions of dollars in cash. So the fit outs were crazy in relation to security and all that sort of stuff. So, when you're opening a new store, it's expensive to do so. So really making sure that you're picking the right locations and you're doing your numbers and you have a really good plan as to how to turn that store into a good performing store ASAP is super critical. So yeah, as I said, we had some really solid strategies and they worked. So that was an exciting time.
I know that. So you transitioned then from Travel Money into the Flight Centre sort of like travel business, the big one. I can sort of, and I don't want to go too heavy down the COVID pandemic route, but
no, all good.
You timed that role perfectly to jump into Australia's largest travel business. I think it was about 8, 9, 10 months before the COVID word started popping up in the media. What you like as agency, as a services business, I think about COVID and I think about our biggest stress was, will clients keep working with us and how do we transition to work from home? Our customers weren't impacted in the same way that you guys were. That is a completely different play. Talk me through it. Looking back a couple of years.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's, the dust has settled to some degree. Yeah, travel's very different today, but it was a hard time.
Definitely. So I joined that business at the start of 2019. So you're 100% right. It was, just over 12 months until COVID. I remember I was in New York, January 2020, and they were talking about coronavirus.
Yeah.
So it was almost exactly 12 months. So I came in and we had, I was responsible for 6,000 travel consultants in 1,000 locations. So again, much bigger rent roll, much bigger staff base. And I guess that's probably always been something that I've been motivated by every time I've changed roles is, do I have an opportunity to work with a different group of people and a bigger group of people, and also can I make a bigger impact on the business, the results, and the number of people I'm working with. So obviously going into Flight Centre, which is the heart and soul of the Flight Centre travel group from where it started, was a huge responsibility. It started here in Australia, so I kind of felt like I was responsible for the brand that started Flight Centre Travel Group in its original country. So that was really exciting. Obviously, the pressure of that was pretty enormous, considering that was I'd been in those peripheral businesses, so we had a huge retail business, and coming into 2020, we had some challenges in Flight Centre brand beforehand in relation to kind of obviously how could we right size the business, how do we make it more productive, etc., which we had plans well underway. But then when COVID started to hit, travel was and probably can still be deemed as one of the most impacted industries.
Oh, no question.
I remember the time we had ScoMo on the TV, and he announced that the borders were closing and our revenue literally dried up. It was overnight. We just saw this massive drop off in our revenue and cash coming in the door. But and at the time ran a huge physical business where we had thousands of staff. Yeah. I think across Flight Centre Travel Group globally, we had 20,000 staff. We had a lot of shop fronts, a lot of rent rolls, and those bills just keep coming in. And, we still obviously have to pay our people. And so that was a really full on time. And it was I know it's been well documented, but how do we actually went to survival mode.
Yeah.
We, had to find ways that we could preserve the cash balance, which was pretty healthy at the time, but how do we make sure that, we right-sized the business to get ourselves through that period? And at the time we didn't know, is this going to be a couple of months?
Yeah.
So this is going to be a couple of, so there's a lot of contingencies. So that was I hope a once in a lifetime, situation. But we did have to, over the course of, obviously March when COVID really started to impact as far as border closures and the like, I had to, because I was running the brand at the time, stand down, 4,000 people.
Yeah.
We had to hibernate, we call them, 400 locations where we literally had to shut our doors, and because we had so few people, we had to cluster those people into key locations and obviously shut the doors of others. And at the same time, February is an expo month for us. So we'd just come off a huge sales month. And over the course of the next 12 months, we refunded 1.2 billion of money to our customers. So, not only were we going through this from a business perspective, but we also had customers who rightly were cancelling and changing their travel plans. And so there was an enormous amount of work to do.
Oh, communication alone. Like, you're not just dealing with staff who are now, like, their jobs are at risk, all their job is gone.
Yeah.
You're also dealing with customers who are like, hey, where's my money?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. And I remember one of our lovely travel consultants, because obviously, a big part of going through that crisis was making sure that as senior leaders were present in the business and make sure that we're keeping up that communication with our customers, but also our people. And I remember one of our lovely team leaders at the time said to me, Kelly, obviously you've had to do a lot of stuff over the last couple of weeks. Like, how and where did you learn to deal with like this type of a crisis or a pandemic? Was it at university?
Like someone handed you a textbook and said,
no, I don't. Well, if I did, I definitely missed that lecture. Like, this isn't something that you have a manual or a study book for. It was completely unprecedented, which is probably the most termed or coined term of that time. But yeah, for the travel industry, it was significant in relation to that impact. And not saying that there wasn't obviously significant impact in other industries, but I think it's pretty well documented. Ours was one of the most.
Insane. And as the biggest, you're also the one who's then most affected. Like, really, it's just a rough time.
Yeah.
I'm in some ways glad to hear that you couldn't just reach into the drawer, pull out the manual and go, the global pandemic that we planned for.
Maybe for future generations, we could write a manual for how to deal with a pandemic. But no, definitely at the time, no such precedent.
We didn't even know what was happening. Like week to week, things were changing. So it's like you can't plan for it. You just can't.
100%.
Hectic time. I look at travel as very different now. My Instagram feed, people are either in Europe right now or Bali.
I know. And it is back.
It is back. It is in a big way.
Yeah.
What is like the current travel business look like now?
Yeah, so obviously, especially the Flight Centre retail business is right-sized.
Yep.
In relation to, definitely, much few locations, but in our top position locations. So the ones that, we know that are extremely well positioned for customers and good performing for our business. So, again, we welcomed back a lot of people that we unfortunately had to let go of, whether it be through stand down and eventually, obviously, redundancies that we had to do once we knew that this was not going away anytime quickly. So we welcomed back a lot of our people, which is great. So the Flight Centre business is, and the demand, and not only demand, but travel's more complicated, or people are more cautious about travel than they were beforehand. So that need for someone to really get trusted advice from, etc., it has been in demand more than probably it has in the last 8 years. So the business is super busy, and again, obviously, producing some really good volumes, and sending a lot of those customers that you're seeing on Instagram off overseas. So from a retail perspective, the business is certainly back and performing well, and then the corporate businesses again, which is a different dynamic or a different pillar of our business in Flight Centre, is equally, it's skyrocketed back as well, even though people are saying that, people are not travelling as much for work. Well, maybe not with other travel companies, but certainly with ours they are. So it's a very different place even from 12 months ago. 12 months ago we were still on that kind of rise, but, we've definitely had some really sustained and great volumes and customer growth in the last 12 months, which has been brilliant.
Yeah. I know your current role has pivoted to that corporate travel and global travel.
Yes.
Is that an area that particularly interests you? What drove the most recent change into that space?
So I moved into our supply business about just over 12 months ago. So our supply business in Flight Centre is basically responsible for making sure all of the travel products that our brands, be it leisure or corporate sell, we've procured, we've got available and ready for sale, whether it be through our customer, like online booking tools, or our consultant agent facing tools. And then once those bookings are coming through, it's making sure that we actually get that customer what they have paid for and out the door. So it's basically all the supply chain elements of the Flight Centre group. So I moved into into supply about just over 12 months ago to run that engine, for want of a better word, and obviously learn a lot more about that side of the business. Being in for my last couple of roles in a brand where you're really working on, that sales, marketing and customer experience machine, this was more around supply chain.
How it actually works.
Exactly. So I kind of took the opportunity to go, okay, well, this gives me a chance to, again, learn something different and have a different impact on the overarching story here. So I went into that about 12 months ago, and then I got an opportunity about 6 months ago to start more working with our corporate brands. And what drew me to that is, I'd been in the leisure side. Like all the businesses that I'd generally run beforehand were deemed as leisure businesses because they were kind of in the leisure segment and the B2C world. And then supply was very much that kind of behind the scenes for both leisure and corporate. And then corporate's, largely a B2B business. So, it was just an opportunity to kind of dive into something, again, that I didn't know much about. So
Space, new area.
I know. So it's been an exhausting couple of years.
I was going to say, it's like when
as soon as I feel comfortable, I feel like, the next thing comes along and it's another learning curve and all the rest of it. But I don't know whether I'd have it any differently, to be fair.
I'll find a way to fight us through a global pandemic in particularly the most at-risk company in the country.
Yeah.
And then fundamentally change roles the minute it's over.
Yeah, exactly. It was literally the month that Flight Centre Brand made its first profit month again. That was the month I moved.
I'm done, guys. Just
exactly. Your work is never quite done, but I think if you feel like you're actually ready to leave a business behind, you probably left it a bit too late.
Yeah, agree. Yeah. I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah.
All right. Rapid fire questions. There's no time limit on these. You can go as short as long as you want, but we'll try rapid. Best experience at work in the last, we'll call it a few years, but I would imagine it's going to be more recent, right? Because there was a few rough years there.
Yeah, totally. I would have to say it would have been our Global Ball last year in Vegas.
Cool.
Mainly because obviously coming off such a really challenging couple of years to get the company together again. And Flight Centre, is very much about work hard, play hard. And it was our first chance as a company to kind of get back some of the stuff that we've always loved, which is getting together, celebrating successes. So that was amazing. It was
big culture, like huge culture.
Oh, huge.
It's what you guys are known for.
Totally. And it was 2.5 of our top people fly in from around the world and party in Vegas for a weekend. So I remember being at that ball and going, I think we're going to be good. You know what I mean? Like we're coming back, and it was just it was quite a pivotal moment. So that was pretty cool.
Take your Flight Centre hat off for a second. Best experience you've experienced as a customer in recent years of any business, of any product, of any service?
I would say there's a couple of brands that I love and I'm extremely loyal to, and I think what I drill that down to is they make it easy.
Right.
And I think about I online shop a lot. I'm sure you can see my shoes in the shot here.
They're in the shot.
There you go. It's probably a detriment, but when online businesses make it really easy for me, then I often buy a bit. So I think that's been the best experience in relation to, there's really something to be said. If you make it easy for the customer, they'll come back over and over and they'll buy more. Yeah, I'm that person.
I'm also that person. It's a punish if a e-commerce site has got that Apple Pay button and I hit that button and it's just instant payment.
One click away.
Oh, it's like I literally saw it.
Did I even spend my money? Was that real money that I just said?
Like it's probably really bad for saving money, but far out. Yeah. Like the friction bar is the lowest it's ever been.
Yeah, totally.
It's cool.
Yeah.
All right. Best experience that you've created for a customer, and that could be the company and that broad team. But think about going back the last few years. I know there was a lot that you guys had to do to, in some ways, rebuild trust and faith in the business through the pandemic. I'm sure that played a part of it.
Yep. Yeah, I would probably say again, part of our brand personality is fun and savvy. So if I think about maybe it wasn't the best experience, but I think probably one of the experiences we created a bit creatively was during COVID. Once obviously borders were stable, as we actually, you're probably just old enough to remember these, but mystery flights.
Yeah.
And they actually were so well received because it was a whole thing of, how do we, and I think our kind of term phrase was, making the unpredictable fun again. You know what I mean? And it was just, so it was probably, again, it's not like we sold the most of that product that we've ever sold of anything. But I think it actually resonated really well with our customers because it was just, one, a bit nostalgic, two, it kind of was a bit of a play on, trying to make what has been unpredictable and travel fun again, and actually probably, do something that is a bit mysterious at a time where, there was obviously a fair few challenges, but also like, again, we designed it in a way to make sure that customers knew that the places that we picked were obviously places that they're not going to get caught out in and the rest of it. So as I said, that was kind of just a bit of a cheeky and fun product an experience that we developed at a time that was, a bit unique in our world as well.
You did, I hadn't even thought of the term mystery flights in a long time. Man,
I know. Well, if you're an 80s kid, then,
100%.
Exactly. And as I said, like we got really good pickup and we got a really good reaction to it.
Yeah, and that's cool. All right. Best way to motivate staff?
Oh, that's a good one.
People are motivated by many different things.
Yeah.
What do you find has the highest success rate or hit rate for you?
Yeah. I would say I love the term clear as kind. And when I say that, I mean that in a number of ways. One, really clear expectations of what your people can expect from you and what you expect from your people, I think is a really good motivator, because at the end of the day, I have a huge belief that everyone comes to work and into their careers wanting to do the very best job. So if you're really clear about what that looks like and they're clear with you about what that means for them to be happy, I think that's a huge intrinsic motivator. The other thing, and again, something that's probably a real part of our culture and model is reward and recognition, and it doesn't necessarily always have to be in the form of remuneration, but, the global ball piece that I spoke about before in Vegas, and just really like making sure people know what a good job looks like and then showing them what that means to them to do that good job, whether it be through trips, non-monetary rewards, incentives, etc. So I sort of feel like, being really clear around what a good job looks like and what then that means for them, I think is good intrinsic motivators, and also a little bit of,
financial incentive always helps.
Exactly.
It always helps. There's not everyone's motivated by it, but I think most people are. So that it all plays a part. I'm going to ask a question that it's going to sound really obvious, but think about yourself specifically, not just the Flight Centre Group.
Yep.
Most challenging experience at work in the last few years for you personally. Like I say, dare I say, we're going to lean towards the COVID situation.
Yeah.
But for you, navigating that and the uncertainty and the challenge and all the things that came with that.
Yeah. Listen, I had to be the voice and the face of that whole change in relation to, I remember the morning that because obviously, everyone was knowing COVID was, the borders were just shut. Our people clearly knew that something probably.
Things are good.
Yeah. So I remember the morning I had to do a conference call, and I remember there being 4,500 people that had dialed into that conference call. And basically I had to tell them what we were about to do, which was we were about to stand down our, groups of our staff, and, basically following that call that they would get a letter to basically say whether they were still had purposeful work or we needed them to stand down. So that in itself, I remember pacing the hallway before I was about to do that call, trying to get myself in the headspace of going, I'm about to impact, whether they're getting stood down or not, I'm about to impact 6,000 people's lives in relation to them not knowing what this means for them. And even if they might not have got the letter that next day, are they going to get a letter a couple of weeks later? And, so that was huge. I remember at the end, it was actually something I was really proud of, even with my colleagues, because obviously all of us in our brand roles had to do the same call simultaneously to our staff base. And I think each one of us, we got quite emotional and vulnerable through that call. And I'm actually really proud that we did, and the fact that all of us were doing it really tough. And I remember at the end, my voice broke up just when I was talking. Sometimes you get still a bit thing when you talk about it. But, and I remember the amount of people that then contacted me after just to go, hey, and it was some people that literally had got their letters saying that they were being stood down, that were like, hey, I just want to see how you're going and I hope you're okay. And, I remember at the time going, I was flooded by texts and emails and the rest of it. And I was thinking, I've just told you that your career's kind of, and you're reaching out to me. And I was like, that's amazing. Like, I think it was a real moment to go for, like, we've got a lot of great people in our business. But yeah, that was probably the toughest day. I think from then, adrenaline just kind of kicked in, and I think making, like, almost breaking that news, kind of everything else just seemed a little bit, I wouldn't say easy is definitely the wrong word, but just less hard, because that was that shock moment where people were like, Flight Centre is having to do something. We are having to do something. And, as I said, we had rolling stand downs over about a 6-week period. As I said, thousands of people impacted. And then about 6 months later, we obviously had to make some permanent decisions on roles, and we had to make sort of 3,000 people redundant. But again, even that time we had to kind of make, do those redundancies. I kind of felt, because we were already in this holding pattern of people being on stand down, it was, again, almost kind in some ways, because people were able to have clarity as to how they could move on. But I remember that moment was just like, okay, well, here we go. Like, this is happening, and this is going to set off a whole chain of events for however long, to do that.
I'm sure for the remaining team, nothing brings you together like going through a time like that. Like,
totally. And that team, that executive team we had in Australia is still so super close, because, there's just very few experiences any of us, touch wood, will go through that's even close to that. So, and we had to lean on each other, because we're all doing very similar things, be it with different numbers of people impacted in our business, but there was not one of us that was, it was only happening to this group of people. Like, it was kind of universal. So those connections are pretty unbreakable now.
Oh, I bet. Well, I think about every company had to do some degree of crisis comms at that time.
Yeah.
Every company of size. There aren't many that would have had to deal with it in the way you guys did. So it's huge. It was massive time. And I can't imagine even just the learning experience comes off the back of that, let alone the team and structure and the way everyone sort of rallies behind each other.
Yeah.
You can't beat that.
Yeah. I can write that university manual for the next generation.
You definitely can now. You definitely can now. You probably should actually do.
Yeah, I know.
Just because when next time we're ready.
There you go.
Let's go completely outside of Flight Centre, because I hear, based on doing some bit of research, that you are a bit of a property mogul, and that you particularly get around this. Now, I'm not surprised hearing about the financial advice conversation earlier. That's an area you're interested in. Tell me about that. Where does that fit into your life? What's the
depends on how you define a mogul, but listen, I think I was very lucky. As I said, I got into financial planning when I was 17, 18 years old. So I still feel really grateful that I was exposed to that type of industry and learnings from such a young age. So I learned really young, obviously, the power and the difference between buying things that are going to appreciate in value and buying things that are going to depreciate in value. So I feel like I kind of got a really good, solid start in a number of things. And, when you're talking to retirees or young families about wealth creation, sometimes you need to make sure you take your own advice. So, so I kind of bought my first house when I was 21.
Wow. 22. Hasn't that era changed? I mean, I'm sure you did the right thing, but gosh.
But you know what? I remember at the time, and there's a saying, live for a while like most people won't, so you can live for the rest of your life like most people can't.
Totally.
And I remember at the time I lived at home until I was 21, 22, and that 20 years ago, like, that was old. Now I'm sure parents would be like, oh my God. That would be, kids are probably still at home until they're into their late 20s, 30s with how everything is now. So I obviously had to save. My online shopping habits were certainly not as strong back then as either. So, but it gave me the platform again to then go on that wealth creation journey. And I think I've bought, I think it's been about 10 houses since, and sold a few and the rest of it.
Wow.
So, and, built a couple of times, and but I love it. Like, I find it's also a really great creative process, and I love learning different things, so it gives me a chance to learn something very different to what I'm doing at work.
I never would have guessed you like learning things based on your career.
Yeah, I know. And you would like, sometimes I wonder why am I doing this? I'm so busy in this regard. But a lot of people have said to me, oh, like, why don't you do property development as a full-time role? And I'm like, but I think I like it because it's something I can do I don't have to be full-time into it. It's kind of something that I can, dabble in on the side, and I do love it. And I think I'm on realestate.com for, a couple of hours a week just sort of seeing what's going on. And again, I like to buy things, and, property's not a bad thing to buy. So sometimes I get a bit of
many worse things to buy.
Yeah, exactly. So, so it has been a bit of a passion of mine, which has been pretty cool. Outside of obviously what that means in wealth creation, it's just been, I've just loved the process of research and, designing and seeing it come to life through construction and all the bits. Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's all the questions I've got for you today. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks for chatting. Thanks for having me.